Kia ora koutou. Welcome to our Policy and Projects Committee meeting for Wednesday, the 4th of December. And to those in the gallery and the staff. We'll start with our Karakia Tīmatanga. We'd all like to start together. Mai te whai mai te tēnei te awhia. Thank you. I needed that. Apologies.
It's from us.
I think we're all here. Conflicts of interest declaration. No, sweet. Public forum. Don't have anyone that I know of. Confirmation of the minutes. All happy with the previous minute? I'm happy to move that through an accurate record. Do we have a second? Thank you, Councillor Cherry. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Right. Straight on with it. Reports. One. On the table, Scott. Carterton's Climate Change Strategy 2025 to 2030 Community Engagement Document.
Yes. The longest title in history. Yeah, kia ora everyone. Yes, I'm presenting on our climate change public engagement document. And so I'll take the paper as having been read already. But in short, essentially, this is just a review and an update of our current climate change strategy. And in it, we discuss what is climate change, how will it impact our district, and then what is our legislative setting as councils, and where do we fit into the climate change action equation. And it also sets out our vision and objectives. So our vision being that Carterton is an innovative and carbon neutral organisation, and we empower our community to adapt to a changing climate, as well as our objectives being that climate change is considered and integrated into council operations. Council is an enabler of positive change within our community, and that as an organisation, we lead by example. And so to support that vision and the objectives, we've identified 3 shifts that kind of generally need to happen across the council and our community. So around enhancing knowledge and understanding, maximising our resources and investing wisely, as well as having a clear organisational direction and building a culture of change. And then in it, we set out our actions and potential initiatives. So actions being the fixed things that don't change, and then potential initiatives being some of the examples of what we might do to act out those actions, for lack of a better word. And so, yeah, this is kind of identified in the strategy as the potential initiatives are not things we are specifically committing to, but say if there's funding or if there's appetite or that sort of thing, then we can pick those up and run with it. And then just in the end, we talk about the public engagement. So this is due to go out for public engagement from the 31st of January through till the 4th of March. And the aim of that is to really get community input onto the vision, the objectives, the actions and the potential initiatives, and also generate more ideas for us as council as to, again, where there's appetite for action to happen within our community. And then from there, consolidate all that feedback and then come back with a final final strategy in the April Policy and Projects meeting. So, yeah, that's it from me. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
Questions, Sky?
Okay.
Take comments at the same time.
I'm liking objective 3, the second to last one, a little bit tongue in cheek. The potential initiatives investigating ways to make operations and processes paperless.
Yes, yeah.
Great. Does that include education?
Yeah. It's
Sorry, Brian and Gail.
yeah, like obviously there's things we might always need paper for, you know, it's just an example, obviously.
Yeah, I know.
So,
I'm just, like I said, just being a little bit tongue in cheek, getting towards the end of the
Brian
year.
is married to paper copies, we might make.
Yeah.
Don't you, Brian?
So, and I also note that there might be some slight adjustments in the document prior to public consultation, maybe a photo change or two. We've tried to do as many as we can local photos, and so there's a couple that might just need a little shift out or it's final proofread. Yeah, but great work from the comms team making that a beautiful document.
Looks really good.
Guy, just following on from what you've just mentioned there, are you happy to take little wordsmithing things
Yeah, absolutely.
with that as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Just to save raising them here,
Yes.
if you're happy for me just to send some through,
Yes,
and you
absolutely.
could look at it.
Yeah.
Great.
Sure.
Oh, your comment. I just really appreciated how you've walked us through the process. It's been really cool from the start to be working with you and having the workshops and to see the end product is awesome. I really love it and I love the vision and how we, got that to sound exactly like fit for purpose. So just thank you for the work with it and it's really cool.
Appreciate that, Lou. Thank you.
Yeah, just a question really, Scott, and around potential initiatives regarding employing renewable electricity and tendering for solar investment to reduce the cost of operations, purchasing renewable electricity. Does that involve the various solar projects, which are a little bit controversial,
As in,
I reckon, at the moment, as a source of?
If I may, Councillor Lawrence, I think when the intent of that comment is for council to investigate opportunities where we could improve our impact on climate change. And for instance, the work that we're currently doing at the wastewater treatment plant, where we're offsetting some of our electricity use through solar generated energy. But it's not the solar farms that you were referring to are private enterprise or private projects that would feed into the network.
So we wouldn't have a direct purchasing relationship with them.
Not necessarily, no.
yeah, so those action, the action around renewable electricity falls under that objective 3. So what are we doing as an organisation?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sky, I'm just wondering if we can add a little bit more in there around our participation in the Wellington Regional Waste Management Plan.
Yep.
Just around the targets and objectives that are within that, and because if those are achieved, they're going to assist with our climate change.
Yes, absolutely. And so, I've got a couple of actions in there related to waste around our food waste sort of emissions and reducing organic waste to landfill, and around potentially doing more work around the construction and demolition sort of waste stuff. But so don't want to just repeat what's already in the WMP, but where there's really good alignment for sure. Yeah.
Just on page 31, I'm wondering if we can add a couple of words and just under objective 1, we treasure our limited water resource. I'm just wondering if we can add into the potential initiatives that we consider volumetric charging under that.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of dovetails in with enhancing water metering, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we can make that more specific with the volumetric charging. Yeah, and add that in. That's easy.
Do you have any further questions or comments? Sky?
So as Robin pointed out the other day, the new buildings have to have water catchment, which is should have come in earlier. But Robin
Part of the district plan.
all part of the plan.
Yeah. So and that's why I've kind of said, again, these are just potential initiatives, but encouraging water tanks on all buildings. So because that district plan will only apply to new buildings, how do we encourage people who already have a house? Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Sky. We've got 3 recommendations there. And happy to take all 3 together if everyone else is. If you're comfortable with that. We have recommendation 1 that we received the report, recommendation 2 that we agreed to proceed with the community engagement with the attached Carterton's Climate Change Strategy 2025-2030 community engagement document for the period from Friday 31st of January to Tuesday the 4th of March. And 3 notes that this document is in draft form, therefore minor editing and changes in formatting may occur if required, and a specific schedule of engagement events will be added prior to the public release of Carterton's Climate Change Strategy 25 to 2030 community engagement document. Happy to move those. Do we have a second? Councillor Ayling, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Sky.
Thank you all.
Item 6.2, waste management and minimisation update. Welcome, Silvers.
Kia ora koutou, Chair, Mayor, Councillors and staff. Just providing a quick and brief update for the waste minimization updates on the last few months. I take the report as read, and as you can see in the waste summary that we are still recycling more as a landfilling, which is very good again. A few important project updates, as you all might have known, and we have also mentioned that we are seeking the procurement for the waste shared service contract for the Wairarapa. And recently we have received quite a few, as you can read, 5 expression of interest responses on GITS. So which is very good. So the next steps will be for the general managers to guide the waste officers the next steps and to develop the procurement plan accordingly. One of the things which I really wanted to highlight here was a few weeks back, Carterton Event Center hosted the Wellington Region Waste Forum on behalf of Wairarapa. That was very, very well taken and very well appreciated by the staff and the attendees as well. A few important points on that. We have 71% of attendance of the attendees who joined in person, and then 75% in total with online. And the one thing which I'm very proud of is that we have 0 food waste at the event. None of the food was left because we have requested the attendees to bring a container with them for the leftovers. So that was very well taken. And as you can see in the service request, Smart Environmental is doing a fantastic job. Every service request or every sort of complaints are being taken care of within the 48 hours. So that's well and good. Just for the next steps, we are still in communication with Packaging Forum to install the soft plastic bins, which is just the key thing because of the time of the year. It's just taking a bit longer. So, and remember that in the last projects policy, I did promise everyone that I do have an update. So that's an update. I'm sorry for that. And at the time I was writing this report, as you can see, visiting eCycle, sorry for the mistake, it's eCycle in Palmerston North, not Pre-Cycle. So last week we went with the other 2 officers of Wairarapa to the eCycle in Palmerston North, which is a very newly started organization for polystyrene recycling. And we really like the way they are trying to take care of the polystyrene in terms of reducing and minimizing the waste and not getting it to landfill. So that is something which is in the next steps for us, so that we're going to have in the trial period. We did have a detailed discussion with the general managers and steering group based elected members recently. So yeah, the next steps are something which we are looking forward to have an update from them, and then we will definitely move forward. And I'm open for any questions and comments if anyone has any. You can see the photos of the waste forum. They were very nice, and I would like to thank Event Center team and their support for the waste forum. Everyone liked it, and it was something very wonderful. So thank you.
Questions for Savish? Question, Savish, just around, has a location been chosen for the soft plastics collection in the urban area?
The one location is fixed, so we're going to replace the one at the transfer station in the recycling area. The second one, we thought it would be very nice to have in the event center, but that is something which I need to have a discussion with the event center team, and after that we can discuss, we can finalize on.
Okay, so there's a number of people out in the community asking about it because it has been mentioned.
Yeah, fair enough.
Thank you. Councillor Ayling?
I just had a question about the organics study. What if you can talk about that a little bit?
Oh, yeah, sure. So we, as mentioned earlier in the meeting as well, that we have received the funding, and currently we are very close to assign a professional third-party consultant to do the feasibility for us, because it's a sub-region thing. So we have recently communicated, and I'm currently doing the procurement process and the contracting for getting the contractor to start as soon as possible.
Councillor Lawrence?
The October figures for the waste summary, we've got about 55 tonnes of waste, of which only 12 has gone to landfill, which strikes me as being
Amazing.
very good. I just wonder, is the trend improving, or 1 month is, not necessarily a swallow in a summer or something?
If I can comment on that, so as a district and as a region, we are doing very much nicer and very much better as compared to the other councils in the Wellington region. So even though we are not trying, even though we cannot minimize as much landfill as we're supposed to, but we are recycling more than other region as well. So I'll take that as a good sign to go near in the future and try to minimize landfill as much as we can.
Because every tonne that goes to Bonnie Glen is extraordinarily expensive, so
Yes, it is.
those ratepayers a fortune.
It is in our plan to diversify the waste stream in such a manner so that the landfilling can be minimized in such an extent and we can recycle as much as we can. So it is on to the upcoming plans, and in the next quarters or something, you will definitely see much more reduction than what you're seeing right now.
Worship?
If there's no one else, I just want to congratulate the whole team, and particularly for the way in which the transfer station is operating. My most recent trip down there is 24th. The signage is fantastic. If you can't understand or follow the directions, you clearly need glasses like me. But that's the change, the transformation is just astonishing. And and I know that you've got some good staff down there. They're doing a brilliant job. It's just changing people's behaviour. And I had a conversation with a couple who just backed up their trailer and offloaded a whole bunch of cardboard straight into the pit hole, and Louise is sort of shaking her head, and you can only ask people. I asked them, they didn't. They got back in their truck and drove away. And, so I know you're up against it at times. I know some people are stupid. Some people are irresponsible. But I guess the best we can do is keep trying to educate and keep making the system as easy and as simple to operate, so that there are no excuses for lazy people. But you've done a brilliant job. I just want you all to know that, and you should be very, very proud. I think you stand out as an exemplar. In fact, I did talk to a couple from Greytown there, and people actually openly saying they prefer to come to Carterton's Waste Transport Station than others in the Wairarapa. Just, take a bow. Really done well.
I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I've got there's no further questions or comments. I've just got something I just wanted to say, as your representative on the joint committee. At our last joint committee meeting last week, it was quite disappointing. Some of our other city councils within the region, they seem to be working in silos, and we're meant to be working as a region to achieve our waste minimisation targets and so forth. And they are going through the process of organising projects and things like that, but they're not being transparent in what they're doing, and we don't want to be doubling up within the region. So they're going to be providing a report back to the next joint committee, just to provide some transparency into what they're actually proposing and doing in their own council. So hopefully that might alleviate some of the angst around the table from other members of the committee, just for the fact that we don't get to see what they're doing, and it shouldn't be like that. The other thing I want to say on just a more positive note is I'd like to congratulate Savish, Mandy and Joe, plus the event centre staff for their efforts in organising the Waste Forum. It is the most successful Waste Forum that has been run by the Wellington region, with 72 participants, 73, thanks Savish. And what the Waste Forum does is it draws in lots of stakeholders from around the region, and not just in the Wairarapa. It brings people from over the hill throughout the Wellington region to participate in it and share knowledge. And it was just fantastic, from the zero waste outcome, the low cost catering per person compared to the last council that held this forum. The feedback's just been fantastic. So congratulations to you and the team.
Thank you. I'll share the feedback with the other groups.
Well done. Right, I'll just move on to we have one recommendation, and that's that we receive the report. We'll move in a second. Thank you, His Worship. Councillor Gallen, all in favour?
Aye.
That's Elise. Thank you. 6.3, consents update. Lawrence and
If I may introduce for those that you have that haven't met, Jeet Karan is our consents and compliance officer, replacing in Lawrence's previous role. So yeah, so this is the first time that Jeet will be presenting a report. So welcome, Jeet.
thank you, Chief. All yours.
The purpose to update the committee on the status of the existing consents. Let's go through it.
So we'll take the report as read, and maybe provide some feedback with this happened between now and writing the report.
Okay.
It's not in the report, and then we'll open for questions.
I think it will be the best thing to do.
Yeah, thank you, Jeet. So one sort of update. Johannes and I had a good meeting with Joel. Thank you. Because a couple of the consents for the public tangata, as well as our existing consent for the wastewater discharge, we need to have input from Apu and Iwi. So Joel will be leading it, and we had a productive meeting, and we've got a couple of things sort of progress with them with that. So hopefully we should be able to provide a monitoring plan for the tangata whenua values monitoring. And the public tangata will be forwarding them our sort of recommendations in terms of what we want to propose to the regional council for the renewal of that. So we can get their input onto it. Do you want to update them on your sort of discussions with the landfill, maybe?
Yeah, so in regards to the landfill concern, it's up for renewal from a very long time. So I've been digging past, in looking into the documents. I was finding it difficult to find the documents because there's very few to get. I did contact Greg, and he provided me the AEE that was provided during the renewals. So I was in touch with the Greater Wellington officer, and he was pretty much straightforward, and he said, hey, you guys need to do a new AEE, and we need to go through the process from the start. And that is where we are stuck now, because we do have an AEE which was submitted during the renewals, which was done a few years ago. So I'm in discussion with Johannes to see if we should go with that process or not.
So maybe just to add on to that is we now know what the next steps are. So we will go through the process of complying with all the requirements and then renewing that consent for our old closed landfill.
And just to add to that, we are still doing the tests as usual. So we have the data of from the previous consent requirements.
Yes.
Questions?
Not actually a question, but just like every time I see Wellington Regional Council and you guys going about, well, how do you do this? Because hats off to you, you know, it's a mission.
Thank you.
Councillor Ayling.
Yeah, mine was in a similar vein to Councillor Gallen there. Every time I see this report, I get really frustrated because it feels like regional council just has total control over everything on this list. And this council is pushing, trying to get it every single time. And then the report comes back and all these dates are from a decade ago. I just want you guys to know that we see how ridiculous this is and how slow a process it is. And the fact that they've come back and said you need an updated AEE, I'm not sure what an AEE is. So that would be interesting to know.
Assessment of environmental effects. So having a landfill.
And surely over the last decade, that sort of thing has been handed to these people in the past, and now it's invalid because it's taken too long for them to do their job.
I sort of just comment on that. It is probably consistent with a lot of the consents because they do take quite a while going back and forward. You go through different stuff, so the handover process between the different one, and often it is frustrating from our point of view because you're having the same conversation with a different or a new consenting officer as you go through. So yeah. It is frustrating, as you say, but they have their process that they need to go through, and yeah, we need to sort of follow it.
Follow on. Do you find that when you're dealing with them, they are coming back to you in a timely manner, or is it long periods of time between correspondence?
They've still got their statutory requirement in terms of 20 days, but it can take a while, but then they don't seem to be in a rush, so we're also not in a rush going back as well. So
I think maybe if I can just add to that, in order to really progress and chase down these resource consents, it takes a lot of effort from our time as well. So we might be working on a particular consent, submit, then carry on with all our other responsibilities. And so we're not constantly chasing them every day on all the matters because all the staff that's working on this has other responsibilities as well. I think if we were probably more aggressive or more assertive and chasing them on a daily basis, we might probably get a better outcome. But it's, again, the resource required to do that is also challenging. So I appreciate the consideration from council or from the committee that this is challenging for the team. It's also we will talk about that in the projects report as well. But we are working on it as well as we could with the resources available, and then putting pressure on them where we can as well.
I'll just add to that. I also see it from an accounting point of view that they're not chasing us because they're comfortable with how things are sort of being managed in terms of the wastewater and that sort of thing. So we're not looking at any abatement notices or anything like that.
Yep.
So yeah. So with the exception of, that was another thing. Basically, we have to send data from our water takes to the regional council, and they're going through a bit of an upgrade at the moment. So that's a process that we're working through. So that's the only thing where we're sort of having issues where they're chasing us for any sort of information. We've got the data, it's just not coming through in a usable format for what they're seeing. So unfortunately, it's a bit of their IT talking to our IT and trying to get them talking together.
Yeah.
Sensibly.
Yeah. Can you tell me what's AE again? Assessment of environmental what?
Effect.
So there just don't seem to be any outcomes from the fact that these consents are decades out of. No one cares about that.
So maybe to Councillor Lawrence, to Lawrence's point, we are still complying with the conditions of those consents, even though they're outdated. So we're still testing, we're still doing what is required for us. And because of the results are reasonable, they're probably not actively chasing us on a lot of those things, even though we want to progress and get it sorted. So yes, they're old, but we are compliant with the conditions set within them. Yes.
Cool. Feels really odd.
So they're probably busy chasing councils that aren't compliant and they need to be,
Where there's-
they have limited resources as
Yeah.
well. So we're ticking along nicely. Others may not be.
Worship, did you want to?
Yeah, no, coming to the same point, but 2013 is a long time. So I guess the obvious question is, what's the risk?
I think that's that main one is because we're not being chased.
Sorry.
Yeah, it is manageable at the moment in terms of we've still got the old consents, and because we've applied for the upgrade, the renewal before they've expired, we can still operate. So underneath the RMA, we've still got that safety net in terms of we're providing them with more information.
Yeah.
But I have heard the odd one where there's like half of resource consents are operating under expired ones, particularly for wastewater discharges. So,
Councillor Dell?
The pond desludging application that's still going on. Are we making progress there, or what's the progress?
So we were going to update on the major projects on that, but basically we are finalising the scope of how we are going to do it. Lawrence met with a professional service advisor or a subject matter expert on the use of dried sludge and what they're doing elsewhere in the world, because that if treated appropriately, it can be used for fertilizer on agricultural businesses as well. So we're just finalising the scope of how we're going to do it, and then we'll kick into it.
So consent wise, we need to find out all that before we apply for a consent to do. To store.
That's part of what the delay was for the landfill consent, is that we were sending it to the landfill and using it as a capping.
Oh, okay.
So we need to finalise that, and that's where there was a little bit that uncertainty in terms of the AEE. So because we say, right, we've got a certain amount, we can start to quantify that, and then inform that updated AEE going forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Because there had been the desludging was in the long-term plan, but we've only got it finalised now that it's going to be over that 9-year split over 3 year between them. So we can say that we're going to be sending X amount to the landfill and apply for that updated resource consent.
Yeah.
Lawrence, I've got a question just around the renewal progress and just around the natural resources plan, and I'm just wondering if the government signalled any changes that could impact our consent applications just related to nitrates and so forth.
Not that I'm aware of, but still I was in a meeting yesterday where they were discussing what that is, but because the plan's already in place, it would be potentially as a separate plan change, but we can't delay really applying for different things, anticipating there might be a change.
Okay, and the other one was just around the kaipatangata. You mentioned that the Greater Wellington will only have a 5-year renewal, and that's due to the over allocation of the Mangataderi. Is that because the kaipatangata is a tributary of the Mangataderi?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further questions or comments on the report? We have one recommendation, and that's that we receive the report. Thank you, Councillor Jerry Campbell. Have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Williams. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Jake. Thank you. No, thank you. And we have 6.4 major projects update.
So I have the privilege of being delegated to deliver Christu's report. I think I want to start off by just saying how happy I am with our one project manager. We have one officer managing all the projects within our LTP. And if you look at the list of projects that we're actively working on, and the fact that they're all progressing relatively well, all delivering on the outcomes, I can just commend Christu for the work that he's putting in. He's currently on a site meeting as they're progressing the various projects. So just want to take my hats off to him. We're trying to give you a view of all the projects that we're working on, even commenting on projects still that's in scoping and planning phases. So, for instance, the wastewater headworks project, we've already started with the procurement planning for that. That project will go out to the market early next year with the intention of engaging a professional service or a consortium for a design and build probably by end of April, at which time they will start to design and then construct probably in year 2 of the LTP. So that is happening. You will see from the report we've been working actively with Greater Wellington on getting the resource consent for the flood mitigation work down at Flat Point. So a lot of forwards and backwards. The Wainawa process water project's progressing really well. We've completed the reticulation network. We are now in the market for the pump station portion of it, which closes next week. We've had a lot of interest so far. That is also almost one of the last key risks in relating to the cost estimate. So when we get the tenders back, we will know, are we within estimates or under or over? To date, we have been able to deliver the scope of work within the approved budget. So that's progressing really well. Again, takes a lot of work from Christu, but he's getting on with it. The other project that's just going fantastic is the solar panels. They've had a little bit of good fortune where all the solar panels were delivered in one shot and not over in phases. So I have it on good authority that they might complete that project before Christmas. So they're progressing at the speed of knots. Likewise, the Norman Road project that was just approved the other day, they aim to complete that by the end of January next year. So there's a lot of things that's moving really fast. Also, Lincoln Road's progressing well. I know it's been quite a journey to get to this point, but we are aiming to complete the project next week. So again, a lot of hard work, quite challenging pieces, especially with the lateral infrastructure there. But we are working through that. And then the next big water project is the Brooklyn Road water main upgrade or renewal. That's starting in January. So you move off Lincoln Road onto Brooklyn Road, and it just keeps on going. So with that, I'm sure there's going to be a few questions. So over to you, Chair.
Questions for Johannes? I have a couple, but I'm happy to open the.
I love this schedule, the programming, be able to look at this and look at the dates, and this just really, it's really, really useful. Thank you. Yeah.
Councillor Lawrence.
Couple of sort of broad questions. One is, has the fact that we weren't able to collect our first rates instalment had any impact on your program of works? And secondly, again, looking at the big picture, are you finding when you are getting tenders for via various things, are they kind of within the bounds that we were expecting in the annual and long-term plans? In other words, is inflation actually abating for this sort of thing?
Councillor Lawrence, so on your first question, that's probably a finance question, but from a project delivery point of view, we have not deferred or slowed down any projects to deal with cash flow. I don't know if there's. I haven't been made aware of any issues in that space. In terms of the tender outcomes that we've had so far, we make a massive effort in the way that we procure. So we put a lot of pressure or a lot of effort into preparing our procurement documents in the way that we set our preconditions of who can actually tender on our projects. We have a very high expectation in the quality delivery by skilled professionals. And then we try and have very specific schedules of quantities to price. By doing that, we narrow down contractors or suppliers having to price unknowns, and therefore we are getting very, very good bids. So the Norman Ave tender is probably the most recent construction tender that we've completed. We've gone for a closed tender process because we knew the market, and we set a very high standard on preconditions for tenders to the extent that some very reputable contractors chose not to supply a bid or provide a bid. But we got three very competitive bids, and they were all within probably within 10% of what we estimated the project will cost. So even though inflation has its toll, I do believe that the current economy creates an environment for competitive tendering. And added to that, the attention to detail in our procurement processes, I believe, is driving good outcomes there.
It's just that, one of the reasons that our costs have gone up so much is because the cost of getting anything done has gone up so much. And I was just hoping you'd say, which you just did, that's moderating a bit.
Yeah, I think the challenge with the challenge we had with for instance, when we negotiated the rollover of the roading contract was that was tendered 5 years ago, with no adjustment in the subsequent years. So when we redid the LTP, it was quite a jump to accommodate for 5 years of contract price adjustment and inflation. So.
Yes, continue.
Brooklyn Road, water main, I'm assuming you have factored into account the closures for the train crossings and how that's going to affect? You think could there be a point where Brooklyn Road will be closed for this and Victoria Street might be closed at the same? Like, is that being factored into your planning at all?
So my understanding is that so they won't be closed at the same time. That is what we're considering. So we aim to complete the Brooklyn Road project by mid 2025. That's also the time at which I understand KiwiRail plan to do the Brooklyn Road level crossing. So it's and then they've been very conscious of completing projects before closing roads, because we encourage them to close the road to keep costs down, like we do for our projects. But so they will close roads probably right at the end. So they'll do all the upgrades and then do the formal closure of roads.
Okay, cool. And will Brooklyn Road be done like Lincoln Road, where you'll have it closed during the day, the parts that you're working on, and then open it again at night? Or will it be closed?
It's the intention to close sections when we're working there. Where possible, we'll open it up for traffic.
Further questions? That's right.
Mine was just a comment following on from what Councillor Troy Campbell said. I thought that spreadsheet of the long-term work program was awesome, and I really like the breakdown of each project and how much the budget has gone through, because that's really helpful for us to have some sort of grasp on where the money's going and how much we've got left.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I understand. I said a question around, this is a positive.
Yep.
Around the switch room upgrade, 195 days and it's 95% complete, and we're only probably 40 days into it.
So very good question, Chair. So this is a master program. So there could be an error in the actual date. And for that I apologize, and it is still a work in progress to make it accurate. The switch room rate was a carry forward from last financial year. And so they've actually started with it before the beginning of the financial year. When I asked Lawrence for an update on it, he said, "Oh, it's 95% complete." So the starting date is probably incorrect, but the progress is up to date. So my apologies for that.
It's nearly complete.
We just a couple of broad questions. Great report, Johannes. Thank you. Just looking at contracts generally and costs, and you just talked about that. Are there any supply chain issues that are affecting contracts?
Not that I'm aware of. We had to make so for the Wainawa the pump station tender, we just had a notice to tender yesterday to update the design because of a particular pipe that's not a section of pipe that's not available in New Zealand. So I think that's probably the closest to a supply chain issue. In terms of available contractors, they are definitely out there, especially water maintenance contractors, looking towards the future of where they might end up. So they've been reaching out, but overall, I think we're in a relatively good position in terms of supply chain.
Okay. So the second part of that is workforce issues. So we've spent a lot of time recently over the last week talking about skills, leadership, workforce, trying to address that. Any of the contractors you're dealing with, or any of the tenders you're dealing with, expressing or indicating that they have insufficient staff, or they're losing staff, or?
I think so. Again, probably a very good question. So firstly, in terms of our tenders, we have a very high expectation on the actual staff that's going to be on the ground. We don't focus so much on the name on the side of the youth, but we focus on the individual that's going to be on the site. So for contractors to bid on our contracts, they have to have the staff. We know that especially some roles within the entry level skill levels, there's a shortage on that. I know Fulton Hogan makes a massive effort of training up traffic management officers and always upgrading or upskilling staff within. So they are working on that. In terms of resources internally, we've gone probably through a year of procurement or recruitment to fill all the vacancies within the infrastructure team, but also the broader Ruamāhanga roads team. So by the end of this year by the beginning of January will be the first time in more than a year that we would have a full infrastructure team. Just because of people move on to greener pastures or developing. I think we're a great opportunity for somebody to grow their skills. Because of our small teams, they get to work across various disciplines. We don't necessarily get that in the bigger organizations. But that also means that they get great exposure here and becomes very attractive to the market. And the infrastructure team competes with contractors, other councils, and professional services. So it's quite a competitive market, but we've been very successful in recruiting recently. So it's good.
Question on the 1 hour. Specifically looking at the 1 hour at the pump station and the tank. I know that the scope of work that's listed there, cutting a manhole in the roof, inspecting and cleaning inside the walls, possible sealing of the joints, earthquake risk assessment. Obviously, that'll be a big one. But no mention of lining or spray coating the interior of the tank.
So once we get into the tank, we will investigate what is required. My hope is that nothing is required. There's no visible leaks from what I'm aware of on the outside. Once the expert gives us advice on what is required, then we will consider various options. But at this stage, my hope is that we can clean it up and there's nothing to do.
Okay, that's good. And just finally, look, I know we're going to get to Ruamāhanga roads next, Mr. Chair, but I'm sort of thinking more broadly that your workload and you are managing projects and you are managing contracts. So we've got Ruamāhanga roads, which we'll get to, but there's conversation going on around possibly you picking up water services or South Wai. Is that a conversation that's going on?
Not officially, no.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to hearing the report on that later at some later stage. Yeah, thank you.
Just going back to the pump station and reservoir, the scope of work for the reservoir, I'm just curious, is that the order? Because I would have thought that you would have the risk assessment completed by professional service before a manhole is cut in the roof and before inspection and cleaning. So I was just asking that.
That's a good question, Chair. So there was an initial assessment done from the outside of the tank. The reason we need to cut in a manhole to get into the tank so that we can do a risk assessment from the inside. So that's why it's in that order. So it will follow the manhole in the roof.
Who's going to be the first person? Exactly.
Right. Depends on.
Depends how big the manhole is.
You're not thinking of a door on the bottom.
No, luckily not.
S detector will be the first person.
The canary. Any further questions? Comments? Thank you, Johannes. We have one recommendation, and that's that we receive the report. I'm happy to move. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, His Worship. All in favour?
Right.
Against? Carried. Item 6.5, Ruamāhanga Roads and Corridor Access Report. Johannes.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll take the report as read, and then I'll just highlight a few matters. So similar to what I said about this too, and the sentiment that was shared about Servesh, the routing team is doing a fantastic job. We got notified in mid-October by NZTA that we have to complete our Gabriel, the additional funding assistance for the cyclones by the 31st of December, or we lose our additional funding, which was quite disappointing to hear, but obviously we deal with what we get. So the team, together with Fulton Hogan, made a massive effort and just got stuck in, and I'm very happy to report that everything for Carterton within that allocation of the 40% fire, that's already been completed since we had that notice. And then, so that equated to around roughly $290,000 worth of specific funding. So that's been completed. The team is also actively working on around $900,000 worth of similar, also within that category on South Warapas network. And we're aiming to deliver that before the end of December. So massive effort. I was very pleased the other day when we went out to Flat Point to see the volume or the magnitude of work that's been completed. I would recommend for the committee to take a drive down to Flat Point and just see the volume of work. We could never fill the report with all the photos from what's been done in response to the last few years and the events. So really proud of the team. Secondly, we've mentioned the new speed setting rule. So in 2022, we had a new rule, which we responded to. In October, we got a new rule, which we are now trying to come to grips with, of how do we deal with that rule and our recently approved plan. Because the new rule revokes the old plan, but also anything that hasn't been enforced yet. However, there are conditions on where that might not apply. So we are working on that, how this might not apply. One positive that's come through yesterday has been that up until now, there's been no funding for the implementation of the speed management plan in this LTP. However, NZTA has now made that open for application. So we can now apply for funding to implement or to respond and implement the new speed setting rule. So again, a lot of work going into legislation changes, but we are working at that. And then just I'll take the report as read and open to questions.
Thanks, Sharon. Worship.
Yeah, and I'm going to start with just accolades, Johannes, to you, your team, and to the work you've done with the contractor. That's still known. Put an outfit twice in the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks, maybe over the last 3 weeks. Yeah, but the amount of work is just stunning. And the way in which it's the speed which it's been done. And I can't help but notice also that service requests that I put through either by myself or on behalf of other people, particularly around the signage stuff, the team's been really responsive. And you can't cater for a clown who like to deliberately push over signs. You can't stop that. But what is important is the speed at which you respond and the quality of the work that's done. And so all of that work's been tremendous. So I think you need to take a bow. Sometimes we can be questioning, challenging, and critical. That's our job. But I got to take my hat off when it's due and when credit's due. And that Flat Point Road, all of the work I've seen out there, and there's a stack of it. to have the minister drive out recently and take time and stop at various points and have a look at some of the work himself. Yeah, impressing people like that is very useful. So I thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Williams.
Just a question. I mean, and in recent times, we've had a member of the public in the public forum, you know, with photographs and explaining from his perspective or their perspective about what gets done and what doesn't get done and so forth. So how does that marry against reports like this that show that we're meeting the contract requirements? So how do we respond or reassure members of the public that what they see isn't necessarily the whole picture of maintaining our roading network?
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I think that's a very, very good question. When we think of road maintenance, we don't just think of the road in front of council. We're always thinking whole network. We're also very conscious of our limited budgets and limited resources, and therefore we acknowledge that there, at any point in time, if you go out on the network, you will find a fault. You will find multiple faults. That's part of managing a network. We keep the contractor accountable of prioritizing response to faults, and we keep our focus on the main thing. During this part of the year, our focus is really on the resealing and area-wide treatment because the weather allows for that. That makes up a bulk of our attention and a bulk of our budget, but it's also the activity that's got the biggest impact on the longevity of our asset. So, like I said, I acknowledge that we might miss a pothole or a culvert that's blocked, but with a limited resource, we try and keep our focus on the main thing. When we do question about why is something in that state, we would typically talk to the customer in terms of the network, in terms of priority. Unfortunately, everybody feels that their road is the highest priority. However, when we consider the total vehicle kilometers traveled and the utilization of assets, it shows us where we should be focusing. Not to say that we won't get to the lower volume roads, we will get there, and I think the evidence are there to suggest that we frequently and routinely maintain low volume roads. But I think the big answer is take a step back, have a look at the network, and acknowledge that if there's a fault, report it. It will go into the program, and when it meets the priority threshold, it will be delivered. Sometimes we're in a good position where we can deliver instantly, and sometimes it's going to take a little bit of time. We obviously try and get onto faults as soon as possible. Our team has a early intervention approach. That's why we're sealing more. That's why we're doing more potholes. If you look at the fact that we repair 87 potholes in a month, probably less than 5% of that's actually reported. We go out and look for it because we understand that if we can slow down the growth of potholes, we slow down the exponential deterioration of the network. So I think it's keeping their eyes on the bigger picture, full network, and in our case, Carterton and South Warapa's network with our team. We try and deal with it as one network.
Sorry, can I just, and reading this report again last night after the audits discussion yesterday, and it just struck me that there's still, and I guess that's always the case, but there's still a disconnect or a gap between meeting the theoretical requirements versus managing networks practically, to get the best bang for buck out of the limited resources and the funds and all of that sort of stuff. So, yeah, like as Worship said, I commend you and the team for doing as well as we do, in spite of all of the other distractions. So well done.
Regarding the speed management update, I've got a few of our ratepayers that have regularly contact me and asking which audit to do. Well, bearing in mind that we approved and signed off on the speed changes in Aotearoa, and now this new plan's gone in, what is the likelihood, I guess, of some of those speed reductions or speed changes actually coming for us being able to affect them? And is there a time frame when we might?
Councillor Cherry Campbell, the answer is there's a good likelihood that we would deliver on most of those speed changes. The reality is, in the last few months, our focus has really been on the emergency works and the risk to the additional funding. I wouldn't be able to give you an exact timeline now, even though we're confident that there's some things in the plan that we can go and deliver. We're also conscious of the fact that there's actually no subsidy at the moment for delivering it. So if possible, we want to get the subsidy to implement, just to have a better outcome for our ratepayers, but then also acknowledging that we did consult a while ago. There's an expectation that speed's lower in certain areas, and we want to deliver in that. We will, once we come to grips with what the new rule requires and our likelihood of funding, we will report back to the committee and give timelines on when we can prioritise the speed settings.
Thank you.
Councillor Lawrence.
I remember you gave us an excellent workshop a few months ago, maybe longer, on the roads, Ruamāhanga roads, and you came up with this genius idea where instead of going out, finding a pothole, coming back, reporting it, and then someone else going to fix it, you'd actually have some cold mix and a couple of shovels in the back of the ute. Is that helping?
So I think it's a bit presumptuous to call it a genius idea.
It's an old-fashioned idea.
I think it's probably a very old-fashioned idea. But yes, what we see on the network is that it's having a significant impact. We are in the process of reviewing the efficiency and the economics of that. Initially, that new activity replaced the general maintenance part, network inspections, and asset updates or asset condition update. To date, the team hasn't been able to figure out how to do all of that and the asset condition update, which is equally important. So we are in the process of reviewing that activity, looking to the benefit of, is it providing the benefits? It's definitely providing the level of service that we were after. We just need to ensure that the level of service is actually sustainable to work within our parameters.
Any further questions? Yeah,
You could have claimed that, you know.
comment. I'll just reinforce His Worship's comments around the work that the team's doing. It's fantastic. I do receive phone calls from members of the community, and I pass on exactly how you've communicated it, that at a certain point in time, those things that are raised will be looked at, but it just can't be looked at or
On demand.
So I can only pass that on, and I have a feeling a certain member of the community may be at the meeting next week raising further issues. So if that happens, it happens. But thank you for the team that the work are doing and for the report.
Thank you.
We have one recommendation, and that's that we receive the report. And we're the mover. Thank you, councillor Della, and the second, councillor Cherry Campbell. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. 6.6,
Oh, aye.
resource consent update. Problem solved.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now we're on to the really exciting stuff. So thank you, Deputy Mayor, Mayor, elected members. This is my last consent report for the year, so I'm quite pleased to be presenting this one. So it's from 8th of October to the 25th of November. We've still got a reasonable amount of consents that we're just chipping away at on our books. And I'll take the report as read. I would just like to touch on that 240042 though. This is quite a cool subdivision. You'll note that it's slightly below the minimum lot sizes just because of the average and the access, but the property's actually been bought by a charitable trust. And so what they're doing is they're going to be relocating a dwelling or do a new build on the property. I suspect it's going to be the relocation, upgrade the building, sell it, and the difference between their costs and the profit will be then donated to a charity that is in the Wairarapa. So I think that's really cool. And it's nice that our team's been able to play a small part in enabling that to happen. Other than that, I will answer questions on the report.
Questions? Yeah. Easy. Look at that. With that, I might as well just move to the recommendation. Serious. I think there's one. Next, we received the report. Councillor Newman is moving that. I'm happy to second it. All in favour?
Aye.
Thanks. Carried. Just like that. And our final report of the day is 6.7, advisory group updates.
I'll maybe just table it and just explain why this report is coming to this table. We've in recent times we've found that it's quite challenging to get all the advisory groups and committees to report back to council, and this is really creating a platform for all of the advisory groups to feed back into a formal committee and for those agendas to become public. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Deputy Mayor.
Questions?
Just in terms of any recommendations or any from the advisory group, do we need to formally receive those, or is that just part of receiving the reports? Like I just noticed there's one in there from the rural advisory that's a recommendation. I'm just wondering how that is received and elevated to council, or is it dealt with here?
I might pass that question on to the Chief Executive, if I may.
Great question. The intent was to inform council on what the advisory group were doing. Together was information. We thought it should come to projects and policy because that's where it felt like it's best set. Where there are things for a decision, I expect that projects and policy would escalate that back up to council for a decision. But most of the information from the advisory groups was actually more information. So we didn't think that that was appropriate to go to full council. We thought the best place was to come here. And if there are the odd occasions where the advisory groups seek council's decision, then you can escalate that up. That work?
So then the recommendation from the Rural Advisory Group, it's down to this committee to discuss and then put that up to full council.
So that recommendation is on page 74. The Rural Advisory Group recommends that council identifies the funds to progress implementing a forestry rate. Councillor Dallin.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, so as chair of the Rural Advisory Group, we have, I'll just outline over the last 2 or 3 meetings, the possibility of a forestry rate has been tossed around at the last 2 or 3 meetings, and also spoken, if you recall, John McFadgen did a presentation at the Combined Council Forum in Martinborough. So basically what it's about is it's to start a long process of identifying whether it is possible that a forestry rate is implemented for the 3 councils. So basically, as Jeff has said, it is unbudgeted in this report. It's unbudgeted expenditure, which will have to be put into all the councils, basically their annual reports next year, and get some funding available so it can be progressed. So basically, from this group, I would like to see that, or I don't know whether we have to move a motion or a recommendation that it be escalated to a full council meeting for ratification, that the council can identify the funds to progress the implementation of a possible forestry race.
Can we move those words around, that we bring it to the annual plan?
Yeah.
Discussions around the annual plan, so something in the wording around.
We have had discussions and workshops previously, workshops, have we? Was that last triennium maybe? Around what it might mean for forestry rates, and that Masterton District Council had been doing some work in that space, and they had kind of made a head start. Vaguely ring a bell?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, that if the CE and the team put together a report for discussion by full council, and at the same time, we receive the information that the Rural Advisory Group recommends that, or provides the support that council pursue it with vigour, because there's quite a lot to this. It's not just the money. It's a whole lot of things. It's other councils. It's the information that needs to be gathered in order to put a defendable case for implementing a rate. Even though Wairoa has successfully done so, they've been able to argue deprivation and community impact, which may or may not be similar for the Wairarapa. So there seems to be quite a lot of front end work that'll need to be done and funded. I wouldn't like us to take the recommendation and consider that all that's needed to progress this. I think we need to have a big discussion around a plan, a timeline, process, all of that, but accepting that the Rural Advisory Group is in favour of it. So that's a good start.
Perhaps you may wish to accept the Rural Advisory Group recommendation and provide an instruction to staff to consider this as part of the annual plan process and bring it back to full council when we come to the annual plan.
Cool. Couldn't have put it.
Because an instruction for staff will at least give us a steer that you would like more information on the suggestion, and we can go away and do that work.
Right.
Robin?
Is there any more discussion on the that's been provided?
I just have a question, and this is on behalf of the smallest farmer in the Wairarapa, which is me. There's a comment in here about recycling arrangement for silage wrap, and I just wonder what that is, because I'm accumulating a little bit.
I could probably comment on that. There is a couple of companies that are accepting clean silage wrap, and I'm not quite sure. I was just trying to think of somebody in your area that would have a bag that you can put it in. but I can work on that for you.
Neil Wadham?
I'm not quite sure whether he's got a bag or not. I know he does, but he would probably be the one to talk to, which I
Yeah,
can talk
I
to
mean-
him later on this afternoon.
Even a couple of small bales a week over 2 or 3 months, that adds up to. His worship people.
Yeah, I guess, what would be useful is some information, because the information I've had is that cleaning the silage wrap is the problem, so therefore it's not recycled.
To be clean.
The other problem I've heard is the companies that attempted to do this work went into liquidation. So I hear that there is a process, but I can't find it myself. So, and the consequences I'm anticipating is that there's a lot of silage wrap goes into holes somewhere. And so I think if we note that, but it would be useful to actually get some specifics around who's doing it and how it's done, because I'd hate for us to be promulgating information that's inaccurate.
If I may, if it's the wish of the committee, then we can get Sarvesh and the team to look into that specific waste stream and whether there's opportunities there. Because like you say, if it can't be recycled, it's probably not being landfilled. It's going into a hole somewhere, so we can investigate that.
Councillor Williams?
Just, I love this report. It's good that now finally, after discussions, that all of the advisory groups' minutes are coming to all of us. And I would say that this would help make all of the members who turn up and put their effort into these advisory groups would feel that, all of their mahi and their discussion doesn't just evaporate. It actually is coming to us, and we can ask the questions we're asking and have the sort of conversations we're having. So, yeah, great that it's done this way. So thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Lawrence?
An apology really to Robin in respect of the Walking and Wheels Advisory Group meeting notes. She circulated them to me for comment on accuracy, and I had looked through it and said, yeah, apart from this little one, except that, I didn't look at who was present and who was the chair because it's got me as the chair. But that was the meeting before, actually, Councillor Newman.
I also checked the accuracy, but
Chairing that.
Right. Well, let's move to the recommendation. We have one recommendation that we received the draft meeting notes from the Walking and Wheels, People and Places and Rural Advisory Group. We have a mover and a seconder, and Councillor Cherry Campbell and Councillor Williams. All in favour?
Aye.
And can we add a recommendation to that we note the recommendation from the Rural Advisory Group that council identifies the funds to progress implementing a forestry rate, and ask that management provide
Council
Annual
as
plan.
part of the annual plan. For consideration.
Council instructs.
and we have a mover for that. Thank you, His Worship. I'm happy to second it. All in favour?
Aye.
Thanks. Carried. Thank you, Johannes. And we have our Karakia Whakamutunga to end the meeting. Kia whakaaria te ngāhui, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha, haumia huie, ai kai. Thank you, everybody.